Hi, Caroline.
Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Caroline Gilby, Master of Wine from England. Hello.
Hello.
And Ivan Maric, Director of Vinistra from Croatia, from
Hello.
Istria. Hi. And in the middle, yes, small, slow guide, but brave company organizing this seminar. So, very happy you are with us, Caroline, Ivan, and all the attendees from Poland. And let's start with Ivan, right? Ivan?
Hello. Hello. Hi, everyone. I hope you can all hear me well. So, I will do an introduction of our region. So, we are from Istria, from Croatia, so the western part of Croatia. And I would like to introduce you Vinistra. So, today you will try and see more about Malvasia Istriana, or in Croatia we call it Malvasia Istarska. And I would like to say a few words about our region. So Istria is the most western region in Croatia, and we practically from 1994 started to promote our wines, our region. And let's say we will next year have 30 years anniversary. So we are doing a huge marketing effort to promote our region. So Istria, as you know, it's a very popular tourist destination, tourist region that it's mostly very well covered by tourism industry. So all it started very in the, let's say, in the middle time, and then the modern tourism started in late 19th century. And Opatia, as you know, it's a really popular destination also for Polish tourists. But we are very close to Opatia. Istria, it's a very different region from the other part of Croatia. It's a peninsula. It's surrounded by uh, three sides from the sea, and we have a really clear sea and very good gastronomy offer. So we have a overview. Yearly, we have 5 million visitors with 30 million overnight stays. And we are very proud to say we are, for the seventh year in a row, the best olive oil region in the world. So this is a huge thing for us because gastronomy it's very well covered, and also wine it's go very good with food. So next slide. So as an association, we can say we have 120 members. So Vinistra is the brand name for Vinistra wines, and it's based in Porridge. It's a small town near the coast, and it's very well covered by tourism. And our members are all engaged in the production of grapes, wines, and also, we have small quantity of spirit production. All members are part of Eastern County and Primorsko-Goranska County, also called Kvarner. Next. We also have a big wine fair that is covered also with wine and spirits competition. Every year we judge over 600 wines. This year we will reach 700 wines in April. So soon in 2 weeks we will have a competition. And afterwards we will have our main wine fair in the beginning of May. We also have a very nice competition called the World of Malvasia, which or Malvasia, which is the president of the jury. It's Mrs. Caroline, where we choose the best Malvasias in the world from 10 different countries, and around 300 samples are judged every year. Malvasia or Malvasia, it's a big family, so inside of it you can find many different grape varieties. But in Istria, it's just one queen. It's Malvasia Istriana or Malvasia Istarska that you will try later on. Next. So as I said, we have the word of Malvasia, which also the worded wines can use our official stamps. So we have samples from Slovenia, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, also from United States, Germany, and so on, 10 different countries. It is really unique. One thing that I heard that we are trying to promote, it's Malvasia. It's the oldest wine brand in the world because everything started in the ancient time, so during the Greeks, and afterwards the Venetians spread it all around the Mediterranean. Okay, next. At the, let's say, our big wine fair that it's in May, it's covered by 130 exhibitors, mostly winemakers, where you can find all our indigenous grape varieties, but also international varieties during 3 days in the sports hall of Jatika, which is situated in the city center of Porridge. I will all of you, if you are able to come, this is in a little bit more than 1 month, to come to visit our wine fair because it's very unique, and it's also one of the biggest wine fair in Croatia. Okay, next. Okay, that's, I think, for me all. I will now leave you to Mrs. Caroline, who will introduce Malvasia, and you will try 10 different Malvasia from 10 different producers. And let's hope you will enjoy it and like it, and maybe some of you will order it. Thank you again, and have a nice degustation.
Okay, thank you, Ivan, and hello, everybody. So, Caroline Gilby. I've been following the Croatian wine industry. I specialise in writing about Central and Eastern Europe, and I've actually been president of the wine judging for Vinistra. For this will be my 9th year. So I've been following the progress of this wonderful little grape variety. And I think it's a really important thing to have a look at for this region, because I think wine is a great lens to understand a place, because it brings together a bit of everything. You know, it brings together the landscape, the terroir, the soils, the weather, but it also brings into the glass, you know, the culture that has shaped the people that have made the wine, and therefore the very human vision of what the wine's all about. So hence my first picture, which I took sitting outside a little winery called Kozlovic, looking up at the church of Momjan, sort of putting the landscape in a glass. So can we have the next slide, please, Piotr? Okay, always worth reminding people exactly where we are. So this is giving you a context of where Croatia sits in the whole of Central and Eastern Europe, and very much, I would say, an Adriatic country, though as you go, you know, further inland towards the Danube, it becomes a much more continental, more Central European country. Okay, next slide, please, Piotr. Okay, and then just to show you a little bit of the geographical influences around Istria. So you can see on the top, sort of middle left of the picture, you can see the name Pula, which is the kind of capital city of Croatian Istria. So you can see, therefore, to the north of that little peninsula, you can see the Alps. And then surrounding the Istrian Peninsula on 3 sides, you've got the Adriatic. So the key influences really are the Alps meet the Mediterranean here, really. And then obviously as you go over the mountains towards Rijeka and Zagreb, and then on out towards the Pannonian Plain, the climate becomes quite different. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background information about Croatia, and I'm sure some of you will know this already, but you know, it never hurts to have a little reminder of the context of how everything fits in. So we know that winemaking dates back to at least the ancient Greeks and the Illyrians, 5th to the 6th century BC. But to be honest, you know, there's evidence of grape growing all across this region going back to Neolithic times. So, and human beings have quite a long record of getting out of their heads in whatever way they can. So I think it's, even though we don't have evidence of winemaking in Neolithic times, if you grew grapes, you will have made wine, whether accidentally or on purpose at some point. So, you know, but that is speculation, of course. So the coastline is a really important feature of Croatia, not just because of that huge, massive Adriatic Mediterranean influence, but also because it shapes the tourism industry that is so significant for this really quite small country with just over 4 million inhabitants. You know, you could fit Croatia into Greater London very nearly 3 times all the population, quite comfortably. But that coastline, including all that vast number of islands, just over 6,000 kilometres, is enormous. So hence, you know, nearly 19 million tourists in 2022, which has just about recovered from COVID. Quite interestingly, I think Istria has a significant chunk of those visitors, around 5 million, and then, you know, they're staying around 6 nights on average. But Istria wasn't hit as hard by COVID as further south in the country, because a lot of Istria's visitors come from continental Europe, you know, Poland, Germany, you know, Austria, people that can drive. So whereas, you know, if you go down to Dalmatia and Dubrovnik and Hvar and so on, they rely much more heavily on people who had to get on a plane or on a cruise ship, so much harder hit. So latest data from Croatia, the vineyard area has fallen a little bit again to just under 18,000 hectares. So again, putting that in context, you know, Bordeaux is about 110, 115,000 hectares. So you could put all Croatia's vineyards in Bordeaux 5 times over and have change, 6 times over nearly. But small but beautiful. So it's an interesting picture in terms of number of producers and growers, you know, around 1,500, just over registered producers. But the kind of commercial ones that have over 5 hectares was about 340. So there is still a lot of people who have very small plots of vineyards, a lot of, you know, people that are just, you know, making a few gallons, litres of wine as a hobby alongside another job. So the ones that I think we're interested in as an industry are the ones that are actually doing this professionally and commercially. So Vinistra itself, the members are about 120, as Ivan has told you. The country is significantly a white wine producer. About 3/4 of production is white wine. And 2020 harvest was quite small, so a little bit smaller than average, but I don't have the 2022 numbers, sorry, because that's still being finalised. Okay, shall we have the next slide? Okay, so Croatia was divided up into 4 kind of main regions in the last few years, just because it made for a much cleaner and clearer communication message. You know, this is a country that's got, you know, 16 PDOs, but the old rules had so many complex categories for wine that this newer category was quite a relief when it was finally introduced. So the area we're interested in, of course, is the little red area of Istria and Kvarna in the top left-hand corner. Okay, next slide, please. And just to give you a little bit of background, Slavonia and the Danube, your continental, moderate to warm. Croatian uplands are distinctly cool, but continental. Istria and Kvarna, Mediterranean, but moderated by the proximity to both the Adriatic and to the Alps. And then Dalmatia, warm to hot Mediterranean, and hot, rocky and dry. So of these 4, Istria is the smallest of the 4 regions with just over 3,000 hectares, of which the Kvarner part is just 190. Okay, next slide, please. So what does Croatia grow? Again, the harvest volumes are 2020 data, but the planted area is 2022. So the really interesting number, I think, for the purposes of this talk really is Malvasia istarska, or Malvasia istriana, which is the second most planted grape variety in Croatia. So second most important after the hugely important inland Grashevina or Riesling Italico. And it almost all apart from 5 or 6 hectares, all grows on the Istrian Peninsula. But I think it's interesting that the 3 biggest grape varieties in terms of area planted are all indigenous or local grape varieties to the region, with Grashevina and Plavac Mali and so on. But Croatia's endlessly fascinating because, you know, there's at least 95 grape varieties that are uniquely Croatian, and then another half dozen or so that have at least one Croatian parent. Okay, so next slide, please. Right, so a little bit more detail of where we're talking about, the Istrian Peninsula itself. And it's almost a little island nation of its own. You know, if you talk to people in Istria, they're Istrian first, never mind which side of the border they are. So what this slide shows you is, in fact, the Croatian part of Istria, but to the top of the slide where you can see it sort of whited out, that is an Slovenian Istria or Slovenska Istria, and there's a little tiny bit goes into Italy around Trieste, but the majority of Istria is in Croatia. But say everybody identifies as Istrian first. And one of the things that I like about working with Istria is that I think for a lot of this part of the world where people were forced to be collectivized in a previous era, it's really hard to get them to understand that working together and presenting a united front to the outside world is absolutely critical. And maybe partly it's because of the complex political history of this region. Maybe it's partly because of its proximity to other countries like Slovenia and Italy. It's always been open-minded, but you know, this is a region that I often hold up as a golden example of a region that can actually work together and cooperate, and works together with its Slovenian neighbours and its Italian neighbours. So, you know, there'll be judges from both sides of the border at the competition and so on. So it's a really great example to see that cooperation is possible and it can make a difference. And, you know, they've got a great story as well to tell through their grape. So, yeah, next slide, please, I think. Yeah. Okay, so this really, I mean, if you haven't been to visit this part of Croatia, I just popped these slides in just to give you an idea of actually what an incredibly beautiful region it is, of rolling hills and hilltop towns and olive groves and terraced vineyards. And, you know, this really, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the soil in a minute, but, you know, definitely a stunningly beautiful place full of wild orchids as well, and great food, quite a lot of, you know, some Italian influence in the food. But you need to remember that this is a place that has, over the last few decades, I mean, has been under Italian rule, it's been under Austro-Hungarian rule, it's been Yugoslavian, and it's been then Croatian from independence in the early 1990s. So lots of different influences in terms of the food and the culture and so on. And maybe Croatia's picked up the best of all of them. But great cheese, great truffles, great olive oil, as Ivan's already said. So next slide, please. So the soils in this part of the world are a very fascinating story. So obviously there's lots of detailed technical information on that map, but the key things that I wanted to draw to your attention really are the Terra Rossa soils, which, you know, are mostly towards the west and the coastal areas and down to the south. And they really are, I mean, that is no filter applied. The soils really are that iron-rich brick red. And it's the Terra Rossa soils tend to produce the most structured versions of Malvasia istriana, and are also very good for red wines, Teran and Merlot particularly, I would highlight in this region. And then up to the, you know, the top of the map, particularly towards the north east corner, you have these white soils. And the picture at the bottom shows you quite how white these soils really are. And these tend to produce the most, for me, quite often the most delicate and most aromatic styles. And then in between these two regions in central Istria, you've got the grey soils, and you have outcrops of humus-rich black soils as well. And the black soils emphasize the fruitiness, and the grey soils are kind of in the middle between them all. So and the beauty about this grape variety that we're going to talk about today is it really does reflect terroir. It really can bring a sense of place to the wines, which I think is very important when you're arguing for credibility in a grape variety. Okay, next slide, please, then. So the grape itself, Malvasia istriana, I tend to spell it with the Z because it's believed to be of Croatian origin. So the Italian name is Malvasia istriana, and you'll see both spellings on labels. But it's believed to be of Croatian origin. There's no known parentage, and it doesn't appear to be related to any of the other grapes that you find around the Mediterranean that are also called Malvasia. So, you know, it really is a grape of this place. The majority of it is grown in Istria itself, some of it on the Slovenian side of the border, and then there's a little bit also that you'll find, a little bit in Italy and a little bit in Brda and Vipava Valley in Slovenia as well. But increasingly, it's showing that it has really good quality potential. And that wasn't the case. You know, if you talk to some of the winemakers about how it was in the previous era, when it was all, the whole industry was all about directed towards volume rather than quality, it was not particularly well regarded. So it's really only been the last couple of decades, maybe last quarter of a century, where people have started to pay it attention, try and understand how to work with it to reduce yields, how it works with the soils, and so on and so on. But, you know, definitely, in my view, really good quality potential. It's also incredibly versatile. You know, for winemakers, what we're going to look at today is the younger, fresher styles, but it can also work really well with skin contact. It can work well as orange wine. So there are two ways of doing skin contact. One is cold soaking before fermentation, and the other is ambient temperature skin contact while the fermentation is happening. And it's when you do that that you get orange wines. So structurally, those two approaches with skin contact are different. And then you can use oak. There are a few producers using acacia, because it sometimes does have a fragrance of acacia blossom, white flowers, touch of honey, which can work really well with acacia. So So lots of options in terms of winemaking, even sweet wines made from pasito grapes, and even sparkling wines as well, though generally in a blend with something else, because naturally it has quite moderate acidity. So that's the maybe the downside of it, is that it's not a super high acid grape variety, which but yes, lots of potential here that I hope you'll agree about when we get round to tasting wines. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay, so shall we taste some wines? And obviously, if anybody's got any questions so far or as we go along, please, drop them in the chat, and we'll either Piotr will pick them up, or I'll try and notice that you've asked a question. Okay. So the first wine that you should have in your glass to taste is from a producer called Vina Laguna at Porreč itself. And Porreč is one of these beautiful, really stunning little old towns that sort of hang out into the Adriatic. So I took this picture at sunset probably last year, but it's such a beautiful coastline. The sunset over the sea around here is quite fantastic. And we're going to start with, so Vina Laguna is the biggest producer in Istria. So the whole of Istria produces something like 10 million bottles of wine a year, and Vina Laguna is about 4.5 million of it. But I always think it's really important to have a good big producer that delivers consistent quality and helps to create a category. And they own, I don't know, at least 600 hectares of their own vineyards on red soils, mostly close to the, you can't really see in that picture that they're red soils, but they are quite close to Porreč itself, hence the picture of Porreč. So shall we have the next slide, please? Yeah, so hopefully this is the bottle that you have in front of you, the 2022 version from Vina Laguna. And for me, this is a very classic, really good starting point for what Malvasia does. It's got that delicate scent of apple blossom. I often get apple flowers. There's a nice crispness on the palate. As you can see from the numbers, actually the total acidity is relatively modest, but the pH at 3.3 is what gives it that freshness and crispness. It's quite ripe, as you know. Actually, I don't know whether you know. I don't know whether it was hot in Poland. It certainly was in the UK, and it was a very hot, very dry year for a lot of the summer in 2022. But then there was also a long period in mid-August. There was quite a heavy rainfall as well, and pronounced dry period. So it was quite a challenging year for people to manage. And the Fastigia from Vina Laguna is from selected vineyards, so it's their better selection of fruit. So lower yields here. So we're around 1.8 kilos per vine. The age of the vines, they're at least 8 years old. And this is red soil, as I said. And the red soil is, I say, it's this iron-rich brick red soil, but underneath it, you've got significant limestone. So 10 to 20% limestone underneath the red soil, which for white wines and for keeping acidity in them is really important. Much of this region is, I think most producers would say that they take a sustainable approach. They're not certified, but they are sustainable. Selected yeast, skin contact for 6 to 12 hours in the press. So that's that just gives you a little bit more structure and texture, and a little bit of okay, can you still hear me all right? Okay, little bit of textural sort of weight in the mouth, I should say. No malolactic, no skip, no oak, just straightforward. This is what the vineyards deliver, turned into wine pretty much. So 75% of it was from Porridge, and 25%.
There's something's going on with the connection, Caroline.
Okay, I am connected to the wired internet. Can you hear me?
It's fine now.
Yeah, it's okay now. Okay,
it's better, right? If it continues, just turn off the camera for a moment. So first comment coming, very refreshing and fruity from Yola.
Yeah,
very refreshing and fruity.
Perfect for a summer sunshine on the beach in Croatia, I would say. Okay. So yeah, great example of what this grape variety is all about. It's refreshing, it's pretty, it's got some weight, there's a little bit of white peach and stone fruit there, as well as this slightly floral apple blossom character, and nice length to it, nice weight, and the acidity I think is super good. So okay, shall we have the next wine then, please? Okay, so I'm now going to take you a bit further south to a vineyard near Pula, Mediavina. Again, it's one of the larger producers, but say there's a huge gap between Vina Laguna at 4.5 million bottles, and then the next 2 or 3, Mediavina and Kozlovic and so on, are around 250,000 bottles. So relatively small in comparison, but big enough to do a really a good commercial job. And this is Marco, who's the winemaker. His fruit and his vineyards with their lovely red soil. So the vineyards here are much further south, so southern end of the peninsula between Pula and Medulin. So it's a slightly lighter, more delicate wine here with, can we have the next slide then with the statistics? But I'll just mention that picture of Marco was actually taken in front of, they've got they make some fantastic olive oil as well, which is a big thing in Istria, and a very nice modern olive oil press in the oldest olive oil press house in Croatia, in Istria, which I went to last year. So 100% Malvasia here. So a little bit lighter in alcohol. Similar in terms of acidity and pH. So pH around 3.3, still under 6 grams of total acidity. Red soil again, sustainable but not certified. I think we're going to hear that a few times from people. And this is around 10 tons to the hectare yield, 10-year-old vines. And say nothing complicated about the winemaking. There's selected yeast again, which is mostly the case in this at this level of the fresh Malvasias, because we want the grape and the place to be expressed rather than the funkiness of spontaneous fermentation. Controlled temperature, so it's all about the aromatic expression of the grape. And it had about 4 hours of skin contact and a couple of months of oak aging. So the idea here being about the floral expression. So yeah, for me it's a really refreshing, quite linear, quite delicate style, but really nice, refreshing, linear, fresh apple juice, crunchy apples. I know you've had these white flowers, these meadow flowers, meadow sweet and things, a little bit of acacia blossom on the nose there. And then just a really nice clean finish for me on that one. Just to say, another example of this kind of really pretty, inviting, summery, really mouth-watering. You can just imagine that with a plate of, as I sometimes do, you know, a plate of homemade Istrian pasta and creamy truffles, just, you know, or fresh fish right out of the sea. Just perfect combination. And there's almost sometimes a little touch of salinity on the finish, so a little bit of lemon zest and just a little bit of a saline note on the finish there. So so yeah, that's your second example. So be very happy if anybody wants to join in with any feedback or comments on the wines. But I will now move on to wine number 3 then, if nobody has any questions or comments. So, okay, so €6.50 ex or shelf price. I think we're, yeah, it is nicely balanced, isn't it? Thank you, Fine Wine Gdansk. Nice texture to it. You know, it's sometimes with Malvasia, it is more about the texture than the aromatics of the grape. You know, as long as the balance is right. Okay, shall we move on a slide then, please, Piotr? Okay, so we're going to go to a little family winery near the little hilltop town of Motovun. And this, you know, this is on white soil, Benvenuti. So the two Benvenuti brothers, I think Dad might still be involved a little bit in viticulture, but you know, it's the two brothers that run the winery, Nicola, and I've forgotten the other brother's name, and it will come back to me later on, I'm sure. But yeah, so I took this picture in their vineyards because I thought it really showed so clearly what the white soil part of, you know, in the north east corner of Istria is all about. And I always think they're the Benvenuti Malvasia, for me, it's always a benchmark of the delicacy of the white soil style of Malvasia. So. So here we've got, again, 100% Malvasia. As you can see from the numbers, you know, I mean, one of the nice things about this grape variety is it you know, the alcohol is usually quite well balanced, somewhere between 12.5% and 13.5%. And so nice crisp acidity here, almost steely, mouth-watering, crisp finish. And again, that nice sort of green apple juice, green pear juice character. Definitely some lemon zest for me on the palate, and some meadow flowers again, maybe acacia blossom. So this is this carbonate, lots of limestone. There's some marl and some clay in the soil as well. The vines vary in age between 10 and 55 years. A sustainable approach, and altitude comes into play here because the vineyards are going up to 350 meters, so that always makes a difference in terms of the breezes and the freshness and the health of the grapes as well, because if you know, but higher up gives you cooler nights, and cooler nights means you keep freshness and acidity in the grapes. And I think that altitude is kind of showing in this lively, bright, mouth-watering freshness here. Yields quite low, 7 tons to the hectare, done by hand here. So the grapes are then selected, fermented in steel, selected yeast again, and fermented cool. And it's on its lees for about 6 months in tank, so it's giving you that kind of just that extra texture on the palate, I would say. So yeah. But yes, a very classic, you know, a great example of what. Okay, no, I mean, mostly I think one can say that, you know, don't hold me to this, but kind of, you know, people sort of these fresh Malvasias tend to be about, you know, 70% or more of people's production. These are their core products, and you know, 6 to 8 euros is often a good, you know, a place where these wines sort of sit in the market. So yes, I can't comment on the price, I'm afraid, because they didn't send it. But if anybody wants to know, then I'm sure Ivan or the winemakers themselves would be able to get some information to you. But it's a lovely little family winery, and they do a mean wild asparagus omelette if you go and visit them at the right time of year. So I'm hoping next week when I go to Croatia, it will be wild asparagus season, because again, wild asparagus and Malvasia Starska is a combination made in heaven. So, okay. Any comments or thoughts on that one before we move on to the next wine? Okay, so we're going to meet a little family winery called Damjanic, and these guys are just outside Porec in a little village called Fuskalin. And you know, there's an interesting family history here, because you know his family have been connected to this plot of land for a long time, but unfortunately, you know, as he said, they had 45 hectares before World War II, and they only managed to get 5 restituted to them, you know, once Croatia became independent. But in that, he has this little plot of really ancient vines on this rich red soil, and we are literally about 1 kilometre from the coast here. So there's, you know, lovely scent of sea air when you go and stand in this vineyard with him. But he's got some of his vines are, you know, 100 years old. I don't know whether he uses them for this wine, but yes. So this is him. And this is the wine. Okay, so the vineyards here are, so West Istria, deep Terra Rossa soil. As you can see from the picture, you know, this is amazing soil. It really is stunning when you go and stand in the vineyard and have a look at it. Actually, the vines for this wine are only about 10 years old on average. And there's quite a few, there are about 8 clones of Malvasia Starska now available commercially. So that's an interesting development, because they're quite recent clonal selections. You know, obviously people have taken cuttings out of some of the older vineyards, looking for the varieties that keep good acidity, or maybe more aromatic, or maybe better for skin contact, depending on what you want to make with your wines. So he's got 5 micro locations, so literally a few kilometres from the sea, looking at around 1.5 to 2 kilos per vine on Gio, and stainless steel tank fermentation again. So looking at, you know, it's just the purity of expression of the place and the fruit. So this one is more pears and honeysuckle for me on the nose. And I think there you can see, especially if you've still got a little bit of the Benvenuti in front of you, from the delicacy and acid-driven style from the white soils, against here, the more textured, a little bit rounder and more broad in the mouth, slightly more structured style that you get from the Terra Rossa soils. So a little bit more alcohol, slightly higher pH, but just that extra. I think this shows really nicely the difference between these two different soils. And there's no complicated winemaking to distract you from just tasting the place. So I think a really nice example of Malvasia Istarska from red soils. Hopefully by 10 years old, it's got its roots well down towards the limestone as well. But lovely little family winery, and making some really interesting blends with Malvasia and also with Tirana and Bourgogne. So really nice little winery that's very easy to visit if you do go to Porridge.
So we have the first comment from Yola again, and from David. Yes, the second one from Yola. It's young vineyard, but effects are already very promising. Great for summer. Well, not only for summer, I believe. And this is our favorite so far. Very nice. Yes. And we don't receive from Mr. Damianic any information by now, but we expect some detailed information about the price and production very soon. So.
Okay, cool. Yes, I think that in Istria they do have some of that Mediterranean, they have Mediterranean timekeeping.
It's definitely Lente, yes.
Yes, deadlines, what are they,
Yeah. And another comment is coming, or two comments even. Let's see. Very refreshing, yes. This is from Gdańsk, from the seaside. Very refreshing.
Yeah. Yes, cool. Okay.
All right.
So should we go on to the next one? So we're back at Motovun. So this is the town near Benvenuti that we looked at a couple of wines ago. A young winemaker called Marco Fakin, who literally has t-shirts made that say "Fucking good wines." So if you've got a juvenile sense of humor about wine names like I do, and clearly Marco does as well. But yeah, he took over this kind of family estate when he was about 26 or 27. So he's still a young new kid on the block, but took over with the idea of, kind of continuing the family history, which had really been relatively, I suppose, relatively unprofessional, but doing it with his vision, with his, and he's made quite an impression, making some lovely wines that year after year, I think he gets a really good medal or two at Decanter, because the wines are just have such beautiful balance about them. So anyway, small family winery led by a bright young man who's very dynamic and very passionate about what he's doing. And little hilltop town of Motovun, if you're going to visit the area, Motovun has to be on your must visit part of your itinerary, and you can see the vineyards overlooking the town there. So should we have the next slide with the wine details? Yeah. Okay, so what we have here, again, the vines were planted between 1952 and 2016. So you've got a mixture of old vines that give you the depth and concentration, and young that give you the the aromatics and the fruitiness. You've got we're on the white soil of around Motovun here, so we're in the north. Sustainable approach, yields around 2 kilos per vine. Skin contact was quite short, just 3 hours in the press, with selected yeast again and cool fermentation. 100% Malvasia, no oak, nothing complicated. So you can just taste in the glass, his vision of what his young, fresh Malvasia should be like. So let's do that. It's a lovely kind of greenish gold, this one. Lots of citrus here for me, lemon peel and juicy and fresh. There's some texture here, a little bit of weight and roundness in the mouth. There's a bit of, stone fruit character for me, and a little bit of, chamomile, sort of meadow herbs. And sometimes you get just a little bit of a touch of bitter almond on the finish with Malvasia, and I think just a tiny hint of that on the finish here. Yeah, fucking good wines. I do like the slogan. It does make me laugh, because they are, and he's a great character, and it's nice to see, almost a family winery having a new life in young hands. So yeah, I mean, you can see the numbers there. This is and there's so many of these fantastic personal stories in this part of the world, where people have rebuilt a past historic connection with wine, and with the young generation. I think the first era of kind of private wineries in the 90s were probably mostly self-taught people, but the next generation that's coming along, quite there's a very lively, quite dynamic university for studying winemaking and viticulture in Porec. There's a good one in Zagreb. So we're finding, people are aspiring to be in wine. So the next generation is actually studying, learning winemaking, but also building on their traditions. So not just forgetting their traditions, but bringing a new perspective. And the younger ones tend to speak English. They tend to travel, taste around the world and things. So that's really, yes, Mandarin. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that kind of slightly, Mandarin tangerine kind of zesty character rather than maybe lemon zest. But yeah, there is definitely a very citrusy note. And again, that little hint of salinity coming through, but really nice aromatic expression as well. So some good comments coming through for that one as well, which is nice. Okay, so let me move you on to the next wine, which is a winery called Frankovic, and this is Josip, who is apparently also a keen horse person as well as a winemaker. And it's another family winery with a long history connected to wines, but that he wanted to come back into the industry and do things professionally, and found himself owning a bit of vineyard in a really fantastic place called Santa Lucia. So passion for wines and a passion for horses. Well, you can tell from the rosettes behind me that I also have an interest in horses too. So I think the two go together quite nicely. So what we have here with this next wine, then 100% Malvasia Istarska. And that's an interesting change, because I have to say, about, sort of 10 years ago, people didn't have quite the confidence to go with 100% Malvasia, and you quite often found 5 to 10% of Sauvignon, particularly Sauvignon, sometimes Chardonnay in there, to kind of, because they weren't quite confident enough, I think, that they could make 100% Malvasia. And whereas that's changed now. I think people really now have the confidence that they know how to make it so it delivers these nice, beautifully fresh, zesty, crisp, attractive wines. So, okay, so we're now 100%. This is 2 to 2.5 kilos per vine, and it's on a mixture. So this is more sort of slightly middle soils, because you've got clay, you've got limestone, and you've got fleisch, which is this what's the word I want for it, shale that fractures really easily, so that you know, roots can get the vines can get their roots really deep into the bedrock with fleisch. And I say, with that high proportion of limestone in the soil as well, as you can see, the pH, which then helps the freshness, is quite low at 3.2. So this is a mixture from 2 vineyards, this Santa Lucia site, which is possibly one of the most famous and best regarded vineyard plots in Istria, and also Bouillé, which is the main town in this little region. So again, did you tell me anything about the winemaking? No. So I have no more details about the winemaking, but I am going to hazard a guess. I know it's selected yeast, and I think, again, this is going to be stainless steel and all about the focus on controlled fermentation. But I've no idea whether there's any skin contact. Possibly, I mean, looking at the sort of rich golden colour, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a few hours of skin contact in the press before fermentation. And then the nose is more, it's like yellow plum and white peach, poached pears. Yeah, I mean, I think tasting that, I would say there's going to be a few hours of skin contact, because it has that slightly salty, slightly saline, slightly textured character to it in the mouth, that I think is from skin contact. And then just nice, the acidity is very supple here, I think, and it carries through nicely. So, yeah. Yeah. So there's a nice fruitiness, but there's this nice steely green apple kind of character on the backbone, a little bit of green almond as well. I think that adds a little note of complexity here, which would make this a really nice food wine. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, that's nice to see. A couple of really good enthusiastic comments for that. Love this one, great fruitiness. We really heart this wine, so that's cool. Yeah, it's really long as well. Actually, I'm still tasting it a few minutes after I've spat it out, really. So, and that's always a good sign when something lingers so well on the palate. So, say place, you know, that ability to, you know, reflect place. So I think the quality of the vineyards definitely showing through in that one. Okay, shall we move on then to the next wine? Next slide, please, Piotr. So I want to introduce you to kind of a legend in his own lifetime, really, Gianfranco Kozlovich. So he has been such an important character in the new era of wines in this part of the world. So he was like the first person to install temperature controls and stainless steel back in the early 90s, when people were still, you know, struggling with old, you know, socialist equipment and so on. So, and I mean, he said to me himself for an article I wrote recently, when he started, Malvasia really wasn't very good. So he and then other people have kind of followed the example he set when he started on this path. And I should also mention his wife Antonella, because she is amazing, and it is very much a family team effort. They built themselves a new winery, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. I lose track of time, but as you can see, it's rather dramatic. And the view from the winery terrace, looking back down the valley over their vineyards towards the little town of Momian, is just Just great. Hello, Jana. Maybe see you in Porridge next week. So yes, daughter Jana is also studying winemaking, I believe, at Porridge. So I think she's probably destined to be joining the family business at some point. So, which I think is probably a good thing for proud parents. You know, they've built so much here, and so it'd be good to know the vision is continuing, really. So, and Gianfranco has done so much to say pioneer a quality approach to Malvasia, and then he was the first person really to start doing, as I understand it, single vineyard selections from Santa Lucia that we just tasted in the previous wine. So, and he's also doing quite a lot of work with Terran and working on turning Terran from a bit of a wild beast into something that actually modern Terran is in the right hands is really good. So yeah. So the wine itself, of course, that is also important. Again, nothing very complicated. It's 8 tons to the hectare. The vineyards are between 10 years and 60 years old. 100% Malvasia. This is mainly on white soil, sustainable and organic, but not certified. Again, selected yeast, 24 hours on skins before fermentation, then fermented at 15 degrees, no malolactic, no wood. So, I mean, this retails in the UK for about £14. So if that's any help, but I don't know what it sells for in Croatia or what its ex-seller's price is. It's almost a spicy honeysuckle chamomile. Again, you know, fresh cut, you know, like Williams pears, particularly, I think, for me on the nose here. A little bit of that apple blossom character. Just really nice, pure. It's apple again for me here. Apple juice, touch of apple blossom in the background. Nice, almost steely freshness on the palate. Again, the pH is under 3.3, so you've got that freshness, even though the acidity is not particularly high. And I think that's a really... Lots of winemakers talk about total acidity and forget to mention pH, and pH is just really critical in determining freshness. So I think that comes through very nicely. It's quite an understated, but a very elegant, nice linear and quite long wine there that really expresses the purity of young Malvasia, I think. Right, but yes, if you ever get the chance, do have a look out for his single vineyard selections and so on as well, and do go and visit the winery because it's beautiful. Oh, there you go. And it's always consistent. It's always year in, year out. It's a wine. If I need to show an example of good Malvasia in a tasting of, you know, in this fresh Malvasia category, this is one you can always rely on. It's just, you know, it delivers consistently. So yeah. So anyone want to make any comments on that? Or shall we? We've got 3 left to go. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll go to a little winery called Cabola, which is literally just down the other end of that valley I just showed you a picture of. It's another really beautiful little winery and vineyard, which I last visited at sunset. So you've got that lovely warmth of the Adriatic sunset just on the stone buildings here. Now these guys are organic and they are certified. So let me just pour some wine here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Okay, and these guys do Malvasia in all sorts of styles. They make a nice sparkling wine that has Malvasia in it. They do amphora wines with it, and they do these the fresher, young fresh styles too. So what we have here then, so we've got 100% Malvasia. We've got low yields here, just 1 kilo per vine. We've got 25-year-old vines, mainly white soils with some clay and some marl, which gives a certain richness, retains some water as well, helps avoid stress. So they're all EU certified, both vineyards and the winemaking. Selected yeast, fermented slightly warmer at 18 degrees, and there's 24 hours of cold skin contact, and it's all in stainless steel tanks. Worth mentioning here that so it's northwest Istria at an altitude of 275 meters, and you can kind of almost, you can see the Alps on one side, and you're very close to the sea, just a few kilometers from the sea on the other side. So it's a beautiful area, just on the edge of Momian. So it's a lovely pale golden straw. And I think a more honeyed edge on the nose, particularly honey and stone fruits. And then on the palate is nice intensity, this salinity, this mineral kind of wet stone texture to it. And just this lovely mouth-watering, lovely clean apple juice, green apple, acidity that lingers, so it finishes really long. So there's a nice concentration from those lower yields, I think, in those older vines, and then this lovely stoniness, textural, that little bit of skin contact gives another dimension, but they've kept the freshness really beautifully as well, I think, here. Yeah, almost a little bit salty and steely on the palate there. So, but yeah, that's another winery that is well worth an explore. But interesting seeing the two of those wines from really quite close together, because say one of my points being about this grape variety, first of all, you've got the sense of place thing, its ability to reflect place. You've also got the personal vision of the owners and the winemakers and the culture of what's shaped them and their winemaking as well. So yeah, so there's definitely some opportunities there, and Cabola as well. Their amphora Malvasia is amazing, so and keeps really well. So that's also worth bearing in mind, that this is a grape that, even though people see it as kind of young and fresh, there's actually a lot more to it than that, which I can tell you. So if we go on to the next wine then, Piotr, unless there are any more comments there, wanted to introduce you to this guy, Ivica Matosevic, who, and the wine that you have in front of you.
Well, there is a comment coming.
Yeah. Okay.
From Poznań, yeah, and from Warsaw. So, yeah, they're writing, they're typing.
Yes, I can see it says typing now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. There's a famous truffle restaurant in Motowun, if I remember well.
Hmm.
Motowun. Ah, questions. Just a
Yes.
question on food pairing for the previous wine. Well, Yola, which one is previous? Cabola?
Yes, I think it was the Cabola. So I would say, I mean, certainly, wild mushrooms. I think if you look at, a fresh shrimp risotto with a bit of wild asparagus would be really nice with that. I mean, so many good fresh fish, and they do fantastic like sheep's cheeses with bits of truffle in, which I love and go really well with Malvasia as well. So there's lots of options from the local from the local cuisine, but you're the sommeliers, I think, in the audience, so you can probably make some suggestions as to what sort of things would go well. But I think white trout and almonds would be a really nice combination with Malvasia as well. Um, maybe some of the meatier river fish like pike perch be good ones. And then for the meat eaters among you, the kind of chicken in kind of creamy sauces and mushroomy sauces, herby, garlic would be good. Smoky aubergines make a nice combination. So I'm sure you sommelier experts could come up with a few ideas, right? And I actually quite like Malvasia with with Asian food, with sort of Thai green curry or Thai fish cakes, that kind of thing. Can it the citrusy freshness can carry really well with those kinds of food pairings. Right, so question about pH. Okay, so what total acidity measures the actual volume of the acids in wine, be it malic acid, be it tartaric acid, and also the smaller acids like acetic, like succinic, and so on. So that measures how much there is in total. What pH measures is how many free hydrogen ions there are in the solution. So that tells you about how strong the acids are, so how disassociated they are. So it's that disassociation that enables you to taste the freshness, and obviously it has an impact on how well sulfur dioxide works to protect the wine and avoid oxidation or any funky characters from rogue fermentation. So there's a whole combination of things, but the main thing with pH being about the level of the measurement of the free hydrogen ions that are floating around in solution, rather than being stuck to the main molecule of the acid. That's my not very scientific, but hopefully gives you a picture of what's going on there. Does that help, Andre? Hopefully it does. Okay, yes. Trout is one of my favourite fish, I have to say. Yeah, so nice bit of river trout and some toasted almonds. Marriage made in heaven. Okay, shall we go on to the next wine then, Piotr? Okay, so I'm introducing you to Ivica Matosevich, who I've known for quite a lot of years. And it was Ivica that first told me a few years ago that his family had lived in the same house for the last 200 years. And the last 4 generations had different passports, which made me really stop and think. Because, if you come from the UK, we're a bit of land that's defined, or it was at least until recent events, defined by, the land stops, the sea starts, and that's the edge of the United Kingdom. So we're kind of quite attached to a bit of geography. And I feel that there's a similar kind of thing going on in Istria. People are attached to the geography of the Istrian Peninsula, because their political identity has been changed around them, from, you know, Austro-Hungary to Italy to Yugoslavia, and then finally to Croatia. So, and that vineyard there is Grimalda, which is one of Ivica's vineyards. I was saying to you just now about keeping ability of this grape, and I think until probably quite recently, people thought this was a simple grape that you had to drink within 18 months of the harvest and it would fall apart. And I can absolutely promise you it does not. I tasted this particular wine, so the Matosevic Alba that you have in your glass in front of you. I tasted it back to 2002, this time last year. So 20-year-old wine. And this was wine that was made to be drunk young and fresh. And the 2002 was still in amazingly good condition, as were, you know, quite a few vintages along the way. So I can promise you, hand on heart, that even simple Malvasia Istarska has an ability to keep. So yes, shall we have the next slide to tell you a little bit about the Malvasia Alba? So, fresh apples, stone fruit, like white peach, lemony, and some floral notes here, some meadow herbs kind of character going on. Nice mouth-watering and refreshing on the finish. This sort of almost chalky, but not quite, you know, just that slightly saline character on the finish again. So what we have here is up to 2 kilos, so 1.5 to 2 kilos of vine. This is on white and grey soil, so the limestone with some clay as well. So you've got the aromatics from the white soil, a little bit of the fruitiness from the grey soil here. Sustainable approach. Had quite a long conversation actually with Ivica and his girlfriend's son, who's been studying soil science, about sustainable versus organics, and it's not totally clear cut at all which way you should go, because you know, it's land sharing or land sparing. If you're sustainable, you can have wildlife in the vineyards and surrounding areas, and maybe more land for those nature reserves as well, whereas organics, you know, generally the yields are lower, so you need more land to produce the same amount of crop. You have to go into the vineyard and do more work with tractors, so more soil compaction. So there's lots of things to think about in this story of sustainable versus organics, which I think depends a lot on exactly where you are. But I do think it's really important that as an industry, because wine is not an essential product in our lives, I do think we have a duty to encourage people to be as sustainable as possible. And whether their vision is sustainability or organics, I don't mind, as long as people are thinking about responsible viticulture and not just spraying the vineyard 10 times a year because that's what dad did or granddad did, but actually thinking carefully about, what do I need to have my grapes healthy, to deliver a commercial crop from this bit of land, and how can I let wildlife coexist with me? So I think they're all really important stories. So yeah, winemaking selected yeast again, no malolactic, no skin contact here, which I think you can taste from the kind of delicate, kind of more linear style here. But an interesting dimension here is that 10% of the batch was in old, i.e. 6 to 7 years old, so fairly neutral, oak and acacia for 2 months. So there's just an extra dimension on the back of the palate from that. You know, acacia gives this slightly honeyed character for me. obviously very subtle because it's older acacia barrels, but it does give another dimension on the palate. So, yeah, I'm gonna. So you know, the complexity here has come from that little bit, 10% aged in wood of both sorts, that gives you that slightly influence of oxygen that gives you a little bit of texture and complexity, whereas one or two of the others, that texture and complexity came from skin contact. So just different ways of thinking. And Ivica does do a really nice Alba Rubinia, which is aged in acacia. So he's got acacia in the winery, which does make it for a really interestingly complex wine that has a real note of difference. And I think that acacia actually can work really well. It sort of suits the characteristics of Malvasia. Okay, so any thoughts on that, or shall we move on to the last wine?
Well, anybody? Yes, Yola is typing. Let's wait for Yola. Really
Okay,
nice.
thank you. Nice complex wine, great job. Well, thank you. I'm sure the winemaker will be happy to hear that if he's here.
If he's here, but he's no,
probably not.
not with us.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Right. So this is the last wine we have, right? That was very fast. That was very fast.
Okay. Well,
so,
you told me to keep it to 90 minutes, and I always stick to my time. You know, I'm not Mediterranean.
You're the first to hear, you know. Well, okay, but Caroline, just you are not. It's not the only one presentation, I believe, with you, right? This year in Slow Guy.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing one with blue grapes from the Danube Basin. And I'm sure there'll be others that we've chatted about, a few other things, but we haven't put dates down for them. But you know.
Good, guys. So if you want to see Caroline again, please make some comments. Otherwise, you know,
I might not come back.
Yeah, she won't come back. Yes, she's very strict about it. So
yeah, I'm safely a long way away, so I promise I don't bite. And I don't bite even if I'm in the same room as you guys. So you know. Oh well, that's nice of you to say, Jola. Thank you.
Yola, yeah, really nice complex wine. And Andre, we appreciate short and concise. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I do pride myself on trying not to talk nonsense. I mean, I don't think there's a huge amount of point in my telling you for hours what I can taste in the wine, because you're all professionals and you can taste the wine. So what I want to try and do is to give you a little bit of context and background so that you can understand what's going on in the wines and why they're worth exploring a bit more. So that's kind of where I come from. So yeah. So our final wine today, I think we were going to have 12, and a couple of them got stuck up with, you know, new customs arrangements. But you know, I think we've still managed to have a really nice selection of wines to show you. So final wine is from a little winery called Rossi. And it's actually three brothers here, but I totally failed to get a picture of the three of them next to each other. So this, if I've remembered correctly, is Marco, but I might not have remembered. But anyway, he's the winemaker of the three brothers. So took a picture of him in front of the in his winery. And they have their vineyards at a place called Vicinada, which is also, you know, one of the most highly regarded locations for quality Malvasia, and I do think that is a really significant development over the last year or two, is that people are starting to, when they started the new era, it was all, first of all, it was about changing the winemaking and getting the winemaking right, fault-free, decent, and then it started to be about skin contact, oak aging, oak fermentation, acacia, and so on and so on. And now I think people have moved to the next level of sophistication in thinking, and thinking about the details of micro-location, making the single vineyard selections and understanding, particular locations that are particularly exciting. Santa Lucia, I've mentioned already, and here Vicinada is another vineyard that is really highly regarded. Long skin contact. Yeah, I mean, certainly if you talk to some of the winemakers, they'll say, oh yes, that's how my granddad made wine, with long skin contact, because that was the way of preserving the wine. Yes, Marco, I thought I was right, it was Marco. Okay, thank you, Eva. But yeah, I think as a family they work it out quite well, because one does the marketing, one does the winemaking, and the other one does all the finance and the business side of the business. So it's a good team anyway. So yeah, but I would say more often that, there's a mixture of approaches to skin contact in Istria, though. You've got people making the traditional fermented on skins orange wine thing, in some cases in amphora as well, but more often I think people are doing skin contact pre-fermentation, so you're getting the texture and complexity, but you're not extracting the same slightly austere, more astringent phenolics that you do if you do the fermentation while you've got skins in the vat. So depends how far back you want to go, really, in terms of winemaking traditions. So yes, white soil here in this vineyard. This is relatively young vines here at this location of Vicinada. So the Vicinada is the picture in the middle for this wine. Conventional viticulture, selected yeast. Just a little bit of skin contact in the press. And 6 months on lees in stainless steel tanks. So taste the wine. So I think we're back to that more aromatic. There's almost a bit of jasmine, white flower, aromatic character on the nose here, and that fresh, lemony, apple juice, fresh pear kind of palate. Quite delicate, quite linear, but nice length to it. So again, very classic kind of white soil aromatic expression of Malvasia istaska here as well. So yes, that is my little whistle-stop tour of the Croatia's second most important grape, Istria's flagship grape, and kind of a little bit of trying to give you a feeling for how it fits in, what its credentials are as a quality grape in terms of its ability to reflect sense of place, its ability to reflect, the culture and the human stories of the region as well, and its ability to make wines that just have a really lovely, refreshing, attractive character to them, but have more than that, have more dimensions to them that, just give you a snapshot of what a great, fantastic grape this is. And maybe next time I'll come back and talk to you about some of the skin contacts and, more complex styles, if you want me back. So yeah, that's probably enough from me. So yeah, maybe we've got a sum up slide. to finish on.
Yeah. Okay, the last one.
Yeah, and this is the coastline. This is just outside Porec. This is how beautiful it is. So what's not to like about a place with lovely wines, fantastic grapes, and a beautiful coastline? So
Okay, so thank you very much, Caroline. And yeah, this is still Yola writing. We like the presentation very much, and we are new to this one. Okay, much appreciated. Thank you. Great. And Andrzej, so apparently we have just two groups, or perhaps there was also David, right? And the others, guys, where are you? Say something, just or show, just show a little bit. Yeah.
So, do you like Malvasia Starska? Do you think it's a grape you should taste more of?
Well, do you like, guys? Yola. Yola likes. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Come on. Show up, guys. Oh, fine wine Gdańsk. Thanks. Seems they like.
Okay,
Thanks
well, that's
for
cool.
everything, David. Yes. Great tasting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Indian food. I
Yeah,
think works well.
the point is to drink this wine in winter as well. Yeah. Not only.
It's perfect for summer, but yes, also with the right combination in winter. It's we still drink white wine in winter, right? With the, really nice aperitif or with your starters or fishes or whatever. Yeah,
True.
I'm sure. Eat fish all year round. Yeah. Okay.
White is new red. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Caroline, thank you very much. Ivan, do you want to join us? Yeah. He's having.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you again. Thank Caroline. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to be in part of this presentation. It means a lot to have a very structured and really professional presentation like Caroline does. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy Malvasia.
Thank you.
That's the idea.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we will meet on April 18 with Caroline. Right? Isn't that so?
Yes. That is what I have in my diary. If you have the wines.
Yes, that depends on the new regulations in the European Union, but
yeah.
Yes.
And I thought it was just Brexit causing chaos.
No, Brexit was not so bad. Thank you, Caroline. See you in Porridge. Thank you, guys from Porridge.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.